The girl the palace forgot. She had everything a girl could want, and somehow that was exactly the problem. The morning Zoulikha turns 23, nobody brings her flowers. This is not because the palace has forgotten. The palace never forgets. By sunrise, the courtyard is already alive. Servants arranging pomegranates in silver bowls, cooks pressing rose water into almond cakes, musicians tuning instruments near the fountain where the water runs amber in the early light. The preparations are meticulous, expensive, perfectly choreographed. But no one brings her flowers because Zoulikha has made it quietly, precisely known over the years that she finds flowers melancholy. They die, she once told her handmaid Fatna, and everyone pretends not to notice. Fatna remembered. The palace remembered. And so, on the morning of her 23rd birthday, Zoulikha stands at the arched window of her chamber and looks out at a courtyard full of everything she asked for, and feels, deep in the hollow place behind her ribs, absolutely nothing. She watches a sparrow land on the edge of the fountain. It drinks, it ruffles its wings, it leaves. She envies it so completely that it frightens her. This is taffra out, not the taffra out of maps and tourist trails, but the taffra out that exists in the imagination of anyone who has ever stood at the edge of the Sahara and felt the desert looking back. The town is old in the way that only certain places are old. Not crumbling, but layered, like sediment, like memory. The buildings are the color of dried apricots. The alleyways twist like the thoughts of a man who is trying not to remember something. The market runs 6 days a week and smells of cumin and leather and something sweeter underneath that no one can quite name. At the center of the town, not geographically but spiritually the way important things are always central, sits the palace of Malik Driss, who has governed this region for 27 years with a reputation for fairness and an unshakable belief in order. He is not a cruel man. He is not even a difficult man. He is, in the way of many powerful men, simply certain. Certain about what matters, certain about what doesn't, certain that the world rewards those who work within its structures and punishes those who step outside them. He has one daughter, Zoulikha, and she is the single thing in his life that has never made sense to him. She is not what they expected, which is the first thing you need to understand about her. She is not soft in the way that daughters of kings are expected to be soft. She is not demure. She is not quietly strategic in the manner of women who have learned to work the edges of power. She is sharp, not unkindly, not cruelly, but with the specific precision of someone who notices everything and has never quite learned to pretend otherwise. She is also, and this is important, genuinely good. Not performed good, not strategic good. She is the kind of person who stops in the market to talk to the old woman selling argan oil because she actually wants to know how the woman's hands got so strong. She is the kind of person who reads letters twice because she worries she missed something the first time. She laughs too loudly for a king's daughter. She asks too many questions for a woman of her position. She has opinions about architecture and water distribution and the migratory patterns of birds, and she will share these opinions whether invited to or not. She is, in short, a great deal. And the men of Tafraout, the sons of merchants, the nephews of governors, the carefully vetted young men brought through the palace gates with their best robes and their most promising smiles, they always seem to agree, right up until they don't. The first one leaves when Zoulikha is 19. His name is Tariq, and he is everything her father selected him to be, educated, composed, and from a family whose name carries weight in 3 different cities. He arrives at the palace in the blue hour before dusk, and Zoulikha meets him in the courtyard garden where the fig trees grow, and within 20 minutes she has told him that she thinks the trade agreement his family brokered last year is structured in a way that will fail within a decade. She is not wrong. He does not come back. Her father says nothing. He simply moves on to the next name on a list that Zoulikha has never been shown. The second one is gentler. His name is Yusef, and he has kind eyes and a way of listening that makes Zoulikha feel, for the first 3 weeks, like she might be understood. They walk the market together. He buys her a length of indigo cloth because he says the color suits her thinking. She tells him about the birds. He asks questions that seem genuine. She begins cautiously, and with great internal negotiation, to hope. He leaves on a Tuesday through an intermediary with a message so carefully worded that it takes her 2 readings to understand that he is not coming back. She asks Fatna what went wrong. Fatna, who is loyal to the point of physical pain, says she doesn't know. Zoulikha knows that Fatna knows. She doesn't ask again. The third suitor, the fourth, a fifth who doesn't even complete the first meeting. By the time Zoulikha is 22, the palace has grown a particular kind of quiet around the subject of her future. Not hostile, not pitying, just quiet. The way people go quiet around a wound that won't close. Servants speak carefully. Her father speaks carefully. Even Fatna, who is constitutionally incapable of discretion, it has learned to choose her words. And Zoulikha, who notices everything, notices this. She tries to fix what she can. She reads about conversation. She asks Fatna, with great and painful humility, whether she talks too much. Fatna says no with such velocity that Zoulikha knows the answer is yes. She learns to pause, to wait, to leave space for other people's thoughts even when her own are already 3 sentences ahead. It doesn't help. The 6th suitor leaves. Then the 7th. She sits in the courtyard the night after the 7th, in the dark, without candles, and the fountain runs its quiet water, and the desert air carries the faint smell of something burning somewhere far away. And she thinks a thought she has never allowed herself to think before. What if I am the problem? And then, and worse, what if there is no solution? Her mother's name is Huria. This is something you need to know. Huria is not at the birthday celebration because Huria has not been at anything for 4 years. She lives in the east wing of the palace, in rooms that catch the afternoon light, and she is not unwell exactly. She moves, she eats, she sometimes sits in her garden and watches the bougainvillea. But she is absent in some interior way that no physician has been able to diagnose or treat. She is there, but not there. Present, but unreachable. Like a letter written in a language that everyone in the household has quietly agreed to stop trying to read. She was not always this way. Zoulikha remembers her differently, vivid, warm, with hands that smelled of orange blossom and a laugh that filled rooms. She remembers sitting at her mother's feet while Huria braided her hair and told her stories about women who outthought kings and rivers that ran uphill. She remembers feeling in those moments completely safe. She doesn't know when it changed. The change happened the way important changes always happen, gradually, then suddenly, in a moment she can't identify because she wasn't looking for it. She visits her mother on the morning of her birthday, before the celebrations begin. Huria is in her garden. She looks up when Zoulikha sits beside her and her face does the thing it always does now. A kind of recognition that stops just short of connection, like a door that opens a crack and then, before you can put your foot through, closes. "You look tired," Huria says. "I'm fine," Zoulikha says. But they sit together in the morning sun, and the bougainvillea moves in the small wind, and Zoulikha thinks about the sparrow at the fountain, and how it drank and ruffled and left, and she wonders what it would feel like to be that free. Not free of responsibility or obligation, but free of the specific weight she has been carrying, the weight she can feel but cannot name. She takes her mother's hand. Huria lets her. They sit like that for a long time, 2 women in a garden, not speaking, and somewhere underneath the quiet, there is a sorrow so deep and so old that neither of them has words for it. It is Fatna who first says the word. She says it in the kitchen, while she and Zoulikha are stealing figs from the bowl meant for the celebration. And she says it the way people say things they've been thinking about for a long time. Too fast, too flat, like running and bracing at the same time. Some people are saying you should see Nana Thiziri. Zoulikha looks at her. Fatna looks at the fig in her hand. People talk, Fatna says, which is her way of saying I have specifically been talking. Nana Thiziri. The name lands in the room like a stone into still water. Nana Thiziri lives at the edge of Tafraout, which is to say she lives at the edge of the known world, which is to say she lives exactly where you'd expect someone like her to live. Her house is small and blue, a blue so saturated it seems to vibrate, a blue that on certain evenings at certain angles appears to breathe. The door is always open, not because she is careless about her security, nay, but because she has never needed to be careful. There are things about Nana Thiziri that the town of Tafraout has decided, collectively and without discussion, not to examine too closely. She has been old for as long as anyone can remember. She knows things she shouldn't know. She says things that don't make sense until later, sometimes much later, sometimes not, until after the person she said them to is already gone. She is not a witch. She is not a saint. She is something that doesn't translate well into either category, something older than both, something the desert recognizes even if the town is uncertain. Zoulikha goes to her on a Thursday, alone, in the early evening, wearing her plainest clothes. Not disguised, she is not naive enough to think that's possible, but stripped of the particular vocabulary of the palace. No jewels, no formality, just a woman walking through alleys that smell of charcoal and jasmine, past a baker who watches her go, and a child who runs alongside her for half a block before losing interest. She finds the blue house, the open door, the smell of something burning inside, cedar maybe, or something with no name. She knocks on the frame of the open door because it seems important. "I know," says a voice from inside. "Come." Nana Thiziri is small and brown, and still in the way that very old trees are still. Not passivity, but rootedness, the stillness of something that has already survived everything it needs to survive. She is seated on a low cushion near a brazier, and she looks at Zoulikha when she enters with eyes that are doing something more than looking. Zoulikha sits across from her, and on a cushion that is already placed where a visitor would sit. She has been expected. "You came about the suitors," Nana Thiziri says. "I came about—" Zoulikha stops. "Yes." Nana Thiziri is quiet for a moment. She passes her hand once over the brazier, not into it, just near it, like she's reading something in the heat. "It's not about the suitors," she says. "Then what is it about?" Nana Thiziri looks at her. It is a long look, a thorough look, the kind of look that goes past the surface and takes inventory of what's underneath. "Tell me about your mother," she says. The silence that follows is not uncomfortable, but it is weighted. Zoulikha thinks about how to answer. She has spent years developing an ability to give accurate answers without giving true ones. It's a skill you develop in palaces, in places where everything said is heard by someone, where the gap between what is meant and what is said is both a protection and a cage. But something about this room, something about this woman. She tells the truth. She talks about Huria, the before and the after, the laugh and the absence of the laugh, the orange blossom hands, and the garden where her mother now sits like a woman waiting for a bus that never comes. She talks about the feeling of watching someone disappear in slow motion while everyone around you refuses to acknowledge it's happening. She talks about the specific loneliness of loving someone who is present and gone at the same time. She does not cry because she is Zoulikha, and she has trained herself out of it. But her voice does a thing at certain points, a kind of tightening, as a slight stutter over certain words. That is the emotional equivalent. Nana Thiziri listens, all the way, without interruption. When Zoulikha finishes, the old woman is quiet for a long time. "How old is your mother?" she asks. 48. And when did it start, the absence? Zoulikha thinks. 4 years ago, maybe just before. Nana Thiziri nods slowly, the way someone nods when they are confirming something they already know rather than learning something new. Do you know, she says, what your mother was doing 25 years ago? The question is strange enough that Zoulikha almost laughs. She was young, she pauses. She was not yet married to my father. She was still in her own family's house, I think. Yes, Nana Thiziri says. In the town of Akfenir. Zoulikha stares at her. The Akfenir is 3 days' travel east. She has no idea how this woman knows where her mother is from. There was a woman in Akfenir, Nana Thiziri continues, and her voice shifts now, not dramatically, but in the way that stories shift when they stop being preamble and start being the thing itself. A woman of great standing. Not royalty, but close. The widow of a regional governor. A woman who had been given gifts by 3 different courts and had turned all of them into something more valuable by the time she died. Her name was Dawit, not a local name, she had come from somewhere further east. But she had been in Akfenir long enough that people had stopped asking where she was from, and simply accepted that she had always been there. The brazier breathes between them. That Dawit had a collection of jewelry that was known throughout the region. Not because it was the most expensive, there were richer women with more jewels, but because each piece had been given to her with intention, with love, with specific meaning. Her late husband had given her a set of beaded necklaces the week they were married. 7 strands of bone and amber and glass the color of the sea at dusk. She wore them on Fridays. She kept them in a cedar box lined with white cloth. She never let anyone else touch them. Zoulikha is very still. Your mother, Nana Thiziri says, without drama, without cruelty, simply as a matter of stated fact, was a servant in Dawit's house. She was 17. She was also, and this is not a character failing, it is simply what happened, she was hungry. Not for food, for something she couldn't name. She was a clever girl from a poor family in a rich woman's house, and she looked at those beaded necklaces every Friday, and she felt something that started as admiration and became, over months, something else. Something that does not have a kind name. The silence in the room is absolute. She took them, Nana Thiziri says. 1 strand, the night before she left to go north. She told herself she would send money back for them. She told herself Dawit had so many beautiful things that 1 strand would not be missed. She told herself a number of things that 17-year-olds tell themselves when they are in the process of doing something they know is wrong. Zoulikha realizes she has stopped breathing. She starts again. Dawit knew, Nana Thiziri says. She did not pursue it. She was not that kind of woman. But she felt it. The loss, the betrayal, the specific pain of having something taken by someone you had trusted in your house, in your private spaces. And she said something alone, in her room, that she perhaps did not intend to carry the weight it carried. What did she say? Nana Thiziri looks at her steadily. She said, "Let what she took from me be what she can never give her children." The words fall into the room like something physical. Let what she took from me be what she can never give her children. Contentment. Peace. The settled feeling of being enough, of having enough, of wanting what you already have. Zoulikha feels the room tilt slightly, like a ship finding a wave. Dawit died 3 years after your mother left Akfenir, Nana Thiziri says quietly. I don't think she remembered what she said. I don't think she intended it as a curse. I think it was grief speaking. The grief of betrayal, the grief of lost trust. But words like that, spoken in the dark by women who have that kind of grief in them, they don't evaporate. They settle into things, into bloodlines. She walks home differently than she walked there. The market is quieter now, the evening vendors packing up, the charcoal sellers banking their fires. A woman is sweeping the entrance to a rug shop with slow, deliberate strokes. A man sits outside a tea house with his eyes closed, his face tilted up to where the last of the day's warmth is still faintly available. A cat moves through the alley with the specific confidence of a creature that knows exactly where it's going. The Zoulikha walks through all of it and feels the information inside her like something she can't yet put down. Too hot to hold comfortably, too important to let go. Her mother stole a strand of beads 25 years ago, out of hunger, out of wanting, out of the particular ache of a girl who looked at something beautiful and felt that the gap between herself and it was so vast, so unfair, that taking was the only way across. And the consequence has been settling itself into their family ever since, like sediment, like weather. Her mother's slow disappearance, her own repeated failure to build anything lasting, the specific shape of a life that keeps offering her things she cannot seem to hold. She is angry, briefly. The anger rises in her chest hot and disorienting. Anger at her mother, at the unfairness of it, at a 17-year-old girl's moment of weakness, becoming a sentence served by people who weren't even born yet. But the anger passes quickly, because Zoulikha is, at her core, an honest person. And honest people tend to move through their anger faster than others because they can't sustain the distortions it requires. What did her mother take? The ability to want something and find it enough. The ability to look at what you have and feel, not rapturously, not in denial of difficulty, but genuinely. This is enough. I am enough. This life is enough. And what has Zoulikha been doing every day her whole life? She stops in the middle of an alleyway. A man carrying a basket of mint has to navigate around her. He gives her a look. She doesn't notice. She has been doing it too. Not beads, not jewelry, but the same action, and performed in the interior, in the private chambers of the self. Looking at her life, her extraordinary life, its impossible abundance, and feeling the gap between it and some imagined other life and aching across that gap, daily, relentlessly. Suitor after suitor, not really failing her, doing what people do when they sense that someone is not present in the life they're living, that they're always, in some profound way, somewhere else, looking for the thing they don't have. Measuring, comparing, wanting. She has been doing exactly what her mother did, not with her hands, with her heart. She goes to her mother that night. Huria is in her room near the lamp, with a piece of embroidery she has been working on for 2 years without finishing. She looks up when Zoulikha enters and does the door-opening and almost closing thing with her eyes, and Zoulikha sits beside her and takes the embroidery gently from her hands and puts it on the table. "I need to tell you something," Zoulikha says, "and I need you to be here, really here. Can you do that?" Something shifts in Huria's face. A concentration, an effort. The way someone focuses their eyes when they've been staring at nothing for too long, and the world has gone soft and they need to bring it back into definition. "I'm here," she says, and her voice sounds more like her old voice than it has in years. She tells her, not cruelly, not as accusation. She does not perform it. She simply tells it the way she would want to be told a hard thing, straight, with respect, with space for the other person to have whatever reaction they need to have. Huria listens. Her hands are very still in her lap. When Zoulikha finishes, the silence between them is different from the silence in Nana Thiziri's house. This silence is more intimate, more damaged, the silence of something cracking open rather than something waiting. "I know," Huria says. Zoulikha stares at her. "I have always known." Her mother's voice is quiet, very quiet, but fully present in a way that Zoulikha has almost forgotten it could be. "Not about the curse. I didn't know about that. I didn't think in those terms, but I knew about the necklace. I never forgot it. I carried it. She looks at her hands. I think maybe I've been carrying it so long that it became part of my posture, part of how I hold myself. And when you get used to a weight, you stop noticing it, but your body is still bent around it. Why didn't you go back? Zoulikha asks. Apologize. Return what you took. Dawit died. Then to her family. To someone. Huria is quiet for a moment. Because, she says finally, slowly, like someone translating from a language they only half speak. To go back would have meant admitting completely what I had been. And I had spent so many years building something over that girl, the wife of a governor, the mother of a daughter. I was afraid that if I pulled at that one thread, everything would unravel. Zoulikha thinks about the suitors, about all the careful threading of herself into a version that might be acceptable, about the performance of being better and easier and quieter, and how it never worked, because the thing she was trying to fix was never her volume or her opinions or the way she asked too many questions. It was this. It was always this. What if, she says carefully, the unraveling was the point? 3 weeks later, they travel together to Akfenir. It is the first time Huria has left the palace in 14 months. She sits in the car. Zoulikha insisted on driving herself. No driver, no escort, with her hands folded in her lap and her face turned to the window, watching the landscape change from the apricot stone of Tafraut to the long emptiness of the desert road to the different, older stone of the eastern towns. They find Dawit's family through the kind of patient and humble asking that Zoulikha has never had to do before. Palace life does not teach you how to stand in front of strangers and say, I'm looking for someone. Can you help me? I have no authority here. It is uncomfortable in the best possible way. Dawit's granddaughter is a woman named Suad, who is 30 and pragmatic and looks at them with the measured suspicion of someone who has been approached by people with agendas before. She listens to Huria's account without expression. She is very still when it ends. Then she says, My grandmother spoke of a girl who took something. She mentioned it once when I was small. She was not angry when she said it. She was sad. She said, I remember this. She said, I hope she found what she was looking for. Huria's breath catches. Zoulikha reaches over and takes her mother's hand. Huria has brought an envelope. In it is money, not payment, because you cannot pay for what she took, not really, but an acknowledgement, a gesture. And I am here, I am accountable. I am sorry in a way that tries to have weight. Suad takes the envelope. She looks at it for a moment. Then she says, Would you like to see the necklaces? The remaining 6 strands? We still have them. They are kept in a cedar box lined with white cloth. Suad brings them out and opens the box, and the beads catch the light, bone and amber and glass the color of the sea at dusk. And Huria looks at them, and something in her face does the opposite of the thing it usually does. Instead of closing, it opens. All the way. For the first time in years, she is fully behind her eyes. She cries. Not dramatically. Not the operatic weeping of someone who is performing grief. She cries the way people cry when they have been holding something for so long that setting it down is physically overwhelming. A shaking, surprised kind of crying, like the body had forgotten that relief was possible. Zoulikha does not look away. She watches her mother cry, and she does not try to stop it or minimize it or redirect it. She simply witnesses it, which is the most important thing she has ever done. Suad excuses herself to the kitchen because she is a perceptive woman. On the drive back, as the sun is going down and the desert is doing the extraordinary thing it does at dusk, the way the light turns everything to copper and the shadows reach so long they seem to be trying to touch the horizon, Huria says something. She says it quietly, and not as a proclamation, not as a lesson, just as a fact she has just now fully understood. I wanted something that wasn't mine. And I spent 25 years becoming someone who couldn't enjoy anything that was. Zoulikha drives and does not answer immediately because some things deserve the space of being said without an immediate response. After a while, she says, I think I learned it from you. Not the taking, I never took anything, but the wanting, the not enoughness. I think I breathed it in. Huria turns to look at her daughter. You also breathed in my strength, she says, the parts of me that work. Those are also in you. The car is quiet. The desert presses on both sides, vast and indifferent and magnificent. And the sky above it is moving through colors that no manufacturer has ever successfully reproduced. Not paint, not dye, not screen. Colors that exist only in this particular hour, in this particular kind of wilderness. And they are so extraordinary that not noticing them would require real effort. Zoulikha notices them. She does not reach past them for something better. She does not measure them against some imagined, more beautiful sunset. She simply looks at them, and for the first time in as long as she can remember, looking is enough. The month after they return from Akfanir, Huria finishes her embroidery. It is not a masterpiece. The tension is uneven, and there are two places where she clearly lost count and the pattern skips. But it is done, and she hangs it in her bedroom where she can see it from the bed. And when Zoulikha comes to visit, she finds her mother standing in front of it with an expression she has not seen on that face since she was a child. Satisfaction, not triumph, not pride. Just satisfaction. The simple, nourishing feeling of having made something real. It's a bit uneven, Huria says, not as a criticism, as an observation. I know, Zoulikha says. I love it. There is a suitor in the autumn. His name is Imran, and he is brought to the palace not through her father's list, but through the recommendation of a woman at the market who told Fatna, who told Zoulikha, which means the whole thing begins in exactly the wrong way for a serious person to take it seriously. He is not from a political family. He is not rich in the way the palace defines richness. He repairs things, instruments specifically, or ancient strings and soundboards and mechanisms that other craftsmen have given up on. He is quiet in the way that genuinely interested people are quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because they are listening hard enough that speaking seems secondary. He meets Zoulikha in the courtyard near the fountain where the water runs amber in the early light, and they talk for 2 hours, and she does not edit herself, and he does not flinch, and at the end of it he says, without artifice, You think about things the way I think about things, that's not common. She looks at him. She does not reach past him for something she imagines would be better. She does not measure the gap between him and an idealized version of a suitor her mind invented. She looks at him, specifically, with the full attention that presence makes possible. Come back Thursday, she says. He comes back Thursday, and Friday, and the following Tuesday. And this is not a love story, not exactly, or rather, it is a love story, but not the kind that ends at the beginning. It is the kind that starts slowly and builds on the particular foundation of two people who are both, in their different ways, learning to want what they actually have. Her father notices. Malik Driss is not an emotionally perceptive man, but he has been watching his daughter be unhappy for long enough that happiness, when it appears, registers even in him. He finds her one evening in the garden and sits beside her with the specific awkwardness of a man who has many things to say and limited language for the soft ones. You seem different, he says. I am different, she says. He is quiet for a moment. And the garden smells of jasmine and the last warmth of summer. Is it the instrument man? She almost laughs. It's not only the instrument man. He nods slowly. He doesn't ask more because he is not that kind of man, but she can see him trying, genuinely trying, in the way of people who are too set in their structures to change them completely, but who are willing to stand at the edge and reach. "I'm glad," he says finally, which, from Malik Driss, is everything. The necklace, the missing seventh strand, is never recovered. Huria doesn't look for it. There is a period in the weeks after Akfenir where Zoulikha expects her mother to spiral into some kind of quest, some need to make it completely right, to find the physical object and return it, and have the universe provide a receipt. But Huria doesn't do that. She does something harder. She lets it be unresolved. She accepts that there are things you break that cannot be perfectly fixed, only acknowledged and then carried more honestly than before. She accepts that the girl who took the necklace was real, and that she came from that girl, and that the woman she became, flawed, absent for years, imperfect in ways that affected her daughter, also came from that girl, and that this is not a reason for shame, but for understanding. Understanding herself does not excuse what she did. It also does not require that she spend the rest of her life under it. She starts going to the market on Fridays, at first with Zoulikha, then alone. She relearns the names of the vendors she used to know. She buys argan oil from the old woman with the strong hands. She stops in the alleyway where the baker leaves a tray of mesimen out to cool, and she buys two and eats one standing there in public, without thinking about whether it is appropriate behavior for a governor's wife. The baker's wife tells Fatna that Huria is back. Fatna tells Zoulikha. Zoulikha smiles for the rest of the afternoon. There is a morning in late autumn that Zoulikha will remember for the rest of her life, though nothing remarkable happens in it. She wakes early, before the household stirs. She puts on warm clothes and goes to the courtyard where the fountain runs its quiet water. The air is cold, really cold, the first proper cold of the season, the kind that reminds you that you're alive. She sits on the edge of the fountain and wraps her arms around herself and looks at the apricot walls of the palace turning golden as the sun comes up, and the fig trees casting their early shadows, and a sparrow, perhaps the same sparrow she cannot know, landing on the edge of the fountain to drink. It drinks. It ruffles its wings. She watches it, and she does not envy it. She feels, in the quiet center of herself, something she does not quite have a word for. Not happiness exactly, which always sounds too bright, too uncomplicated. Something sturdier, something that doesn't depend on any particular outcome. A feeling like, this is where I am, and I am here completely, and that is enough. The sparrow leaves. She stays. The sun comes fully up, and the courtyard fills with its particular gold, and somewhere inside the palace, someone is making tea, and she can hear the first sounds of the market beginning its day in the distance, and the world is doing what the world does, continuing regardless, vast and imperfect and full. She takes a long breath of the cold morning air. She lets it out. The things we chase so desperately are rarely the things we lack. More often, they are the things we have never learned to see. Contentment is not the absence of desire. It is the practice of being present enough to recognize what is already real. The hunger that leads us to take what isn't ours always costs us more than whatever we thought we were gaining. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.